Hello, this is McD the Beast, and this is McD Sports 4 coming to you today with my college football top 25 for week 6 of the 2023 college football season. Before I continue, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to your channel. Really appreciate if you do that. Um, so this past week, week 5, pretty good week of college football. I think we saw a lot of things this week that could lead to other things. For instance, Georgia struggled against Auburn. You had a few top 25 matchups. Notre Dame getting back on track with a win against Duke in that top 25 game that went down to the wire. The Ole Miss LSU game might be the game of the year. That game was outstanding. Ole Miss won that game 55-49. Um, I mean, USC almost blowing a game to Colorado. You had some pretty good games this week. This upcoming week, you do have some top 25 games. The game of the week next week is going to be the Red River Shootout. I'll preview that a little bit in that game in this top 25. I know I did not release game picks at all for either the NFL or college football. I will be doing that this week. Try and get back on track there. So let's get into it. College football top 25 for week 6. We'll go 1 through 25. I'll give a bit of an explanation why I have a team where they are at, teams I dropped out, and then teams I considered. So 1 through 5 did not change from last week. Um, Michigan 1, Georgia 2, Penn State 3, Ohio State 4, Washington 5. Michigan 45-7 over Nebraska. Probably the first real impressive win for Michigan. I think Jim Harbaugh's back, and Michigan just looks 1,000 times better. So number 1, Michigan. Number 2, Georgia. You could have made the argument, maybe move down Georgia. I'm gonna give Georgia a bit of the benefit of the doubt. Every year a team just has a sluggish game. I'm gonna assume this is the game for Georgia. Um, Also, Auburn's a tough place to play. I know I'm not high on Auburn this year, but they are a tough place to play. Give Auburn credit for being competitive in this game. They jumped out to a 10-0 lead. Um, but Georgia, I think, is just the better. Just showed that they were the better team. The game went down to the wire. I know some people are ranking Georgia as low as 6th or 7th in their pool because they just haven't really seen a complete game from Georgia against a worthy opponent. Georgia's the second best team in the country, in my opinion. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Penn State. They went ahead and got a backdoor cover against Northwestern. Once again, James Franklin loves scoring late touchdowns because he's the scumbag he is. Sorry, but I just got to point that out. I am not a James Franklin fan, and yesterday it's just another reason why. Um, but I mean, Penn State, out of Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, they could very well come out of those three teams there. So number 3, Penn State. I believe they get UMass, I want to say, and then they get some big opponents. They get Ohio State, Michigan, and a few others down the stretch. So number 3, Penn State. Number 4, Ohio State. They had a bye week. I didn't move them. Um, the Notre Dame. They got the win against Duke, so that helps out Ohio State's resume. You look at Ohio State. Big game this week against Maryland. I mean, Maryland is a team that's undefeated. Ohio State should not take them lightly. And don't call me a homer because I am a Maryland Terps fan, but mm, Ohio State should not take Maryland lightly. So, big noon kickoff game this week. We'll see what happens in that one. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Washington. They went ahead and beat Arizona 31-24. I mean, a bit of I mean, I watched most of this game, the Arizona Washington game. I think Arizona is a lot better than what people think. Personally, I think that's what this game really came down to. Washington got the win. So they're undefeated. They get Oregon in 2 weeks. I know that. So that's gonna be a hell of a game. And speaking about Oregon number 6. I moved them up one spot. Um, Bit of a slow start against Stanford, I'll admit that. But remember they were coming off of a top 25 matchup that got a lot of hype last week against Colorado. 42-6 was the final. 2 games in a row, Oregon has won 42-6. They beat Stanford. Moved them up one spot. 2 weeks from now, Oregon, they go ahead and they go ahead and get Washington. So big matchup there coming up in 2 weeks. Number 7, Texas. The more I watch Texas, the more I think they have a really good shot at making the college football playoffs. Big game this week in the Red River Shootout. Number 7, Texas. I moved them up 2 spots. And I think the most underrated thing helping Texas, believe it or not, isn't the wins against Alabama. It isn't blowing out Baylor, who had a nice comeback victory against UCF. Um, I feel it's not beating Kansas, who's a fringe top 25 team. It's the win against Wyoming. Wyoming, in my opinion, and I'll talk about this in the teams I consider. Because I did consider Wyoming. Wyoming looks like the best Group of Five team in my opinion, from what I have seen so far out of the Group of Five. Now, granted, I might be wrong about that. They have one loss, Wyoming, but that is to the number 7 team in the country, who is on a tear. But um, that's the most underrated thing about Texas' resume. We'll see what happens to Texas down in this game against the Red River Shootout. I'm gonna be watching it for sure. I'll have one TV on Big Noon Kickoff, the other one on ABC. For these 2 games with Ohio State Maryland and Texas Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens. Number 8, Florida State. They didn't play anybody this week. I moved them down 2 spots. The LSU loss hurts Florida State's resume. So Florida State moved them down 2 spots. I still think they're a top 10 team, but I did think that the resume got hurt a little bit for Florida State. Notre Dame moved them up 2 spots. Good job going into Duke, a sold out Duke crowd, and getting a win there last second, kind of like last week against Ohio State. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame was on the winning side of it. USC in 2 weeks for Notre Dame. We'll see what happens in that game. I believe they're gonna get. I believe they have another. Oh yeah, they get Clemson on the schedule. Clemson's gonna be another game as well for Notre Dame on the road against Clemson. Notre Dame will get a few more cracks this year, in my opinion, in big time games. Um, Number 9, Notre Dame. Nice bounce back win for Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish. Number 10, Kentucky. I am so happy that I was able to move Kentucky up into the top 10. I moved them up 2 spots to number 10. It seems like everybody was surprised that Kentucky went ahead and blew out Florida. I was not. I'll admit to you guys, I saw that coming from a mile away. Kentucky was a 1.5 point favorite. I would have taken Kentucky minus 11.5 in that game, honestly. Florida should have not even been ranked. But Kentucky taking care of business of a ranked team. They showed why I was higher on them coming into the season. They get Georgia next week. I don't feel good about that game for Kentucky, but at the same time, I do think Kentucky can hang around in that game. Those games always seem to be kind of low scoring, but then Georgia kind of pulls away, and Georgia ends up winning it something like 28-10 or 31-10. Um, Probably something similar. Maybe Georgia doesn't pull away as much, but uh, Kentucky number 10, they've earned it in my opinion. Number 10, Kentucky moved them up 2 spots. All right, number 11, Southern Cal. I moved Southern Cal down 1 spot. And guys, I told you so. I told you that the defense for Southern Cal has not improved, and I said that I said that's going to be the Achilles heel for Southern Cal, and that's why I'm not buying into it. And they proved it to me against Colorado. Did they beat Colorado 48-41? Yes. I don't care that they beat Colorado 48-41. You look at that defense. That defense is horrifically bad for Southern Cal. And I mean, they get Washington, they get Notre Dame. I believe they get UCLA, they get Utah. Even though Utah it doesn't really have much of an offense right now, more than that in a second. Even that, I mean, you look at Southern Cal. I mean, they're not a college football playoff team. They're probably, to be honest, they're not really a Pac-12 contender because there's 2 teams at 5 and 6 that are better than Southern Cal. And I'm just gonna come out and say right now, Southern Cal is basically gonna have to get in a track meet with teams to beat them. Now now Washington, yes, they could. If Oregon faces Southern Cal in the Pac-12 championship game, they don't face each other in the regular season. But let's say Southern Cal gets to the Pac-12 championship game against Oregon. Oregon's going to win that game by 3 to 4 touchdowns. I mean, so I'm not high on Southern Cal at all. I think are they a top 10ish team? Yes. Did I move them down one spot? Yes. Number 11, Southern Cal. Number 12, Alabama. Nice win against Mississippi State. 40-17 was the final on the road there in Stark Vegas. Um, Big game against Texas A&M this week for Alabama on the road as well. We'll see what happens in that game. A&M is definitely a team that I think is going to get some consideration to be in the top 25, in the AP top 25 and other people's top 25. So should be a good game. 3:30 on CBS. So, but nice win for Alabama. Moved them up one spot to number 12. Number 13, Oregon State. Move Oregon State up 4 spots. Um, Oregon State, man, I feel bad for them. They have nowhere to go next year, conference wise, and they're a pretty damn good football team. I mean, big win against Utah. I mean, big what a big time win. I mean, Oregon State. They do have a loss against Washington State. Do I think they could really beat the big boys such as Oregon? I think they get Washington on the schedule as well. Um, do I think they could beat those two teams? I think they'll be probably double-digit dogs to both of them, but doesn't mean they can't beat them. But I don't give it much of a shot. But Oregon State got back on track with a big time win against Utah, 21-7. Really impressive this defense for Oregon State. Now, granted, and I'll talk about this when I talk about Utah, but number 13, Oregon State. Number 14, North Carolina, moved them up one spot. I believe North Carolina was on a bye week this week, so um, they just moved them up one spot. They get Miami on the schedule. They get I believe they get someone else on the schedule that's kind of big down the stretch as well. Number 14, North Carolina. Um, Pretty impressed with them so far. Drake May will be the number 2 quarterback taken out of the draft. Number 15, Utah. Move Utah down 7 spots from number 8 to number 15. Utah needs Cam Rising back. That's basically the more of the story. I thought he was going to give it a go. When they went ahead last week when they faced UCLA, they held him out. They held him out again this week. You gotta give. I mean, they need Cam Rising back desperately. I mean, this offense. I'm just gonna be kind of saying this. They do not have a backup quarterback behind Cam Rising. I mean, their whole offense is basically running the ball. So, I mean, they're so one dimensional without Cam Rising. They desperately need Cam Rising back. That's basically the more of the story for Utah. I moved down 7 spots to number 15. I still think they're a good team, but they need Cam Rising back. If they get Cam Rising back, they could really compete. I think for the Pac-12. But without Cam Rising, they get Southern Cal. That game's going to be an uphill battle. Colorado at the end of the year, I think is going to be an uphill battle. And Cam Rising will be back, I think, for Colorado, but maybe not the Southern Cal game. I don't know who they get next week, but they need Cam Rising back. That's the more of the story for Utah. So that's the top 15, 16 through 20 now. Number 16, Ole Miss, winning that crazy game against LSU, 55-49. What a great win for Lane Kiffin. What a bounce back win against a team in LSU that's definitely a top 25 team. Um, you look at Ole Miss, um, I mean, what can I say? They were down for most of that game too. They came back down 49-40. So back and forth game. I mean, it was a wild game in Oxford. Uh, it's interesting to see what Ole Miss does here down basically the second half of the season. I know we're not quite there yet, but they still get A&M. Auburn looks like they have a pulse. They get an interesting game against Georgia late in the season out of the East, so that's gonna be an interesting one. Ole Miss they look like a fringe top 15 team. I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing from Lane Kiffin. This was a nice bounce back win after last week's disappointment against Alabama for me. So number 16 Ole Miss, number 17 Oklahoma. They blew out Iowa State 50-20, moved them up one spot. Nice win for Oklahoma before the Red River Shootout. I'll admit I do think Oklahoma's going to be about a 10-point dog in that game when the line comes out. That's where I would probably put it. Doesn't mean Oklahoma can win that game. It's a rivalry game. I definitely give Oklahoma like a 30 to 35% shot of winning that game. Um, the question is, can they? Um, and I'll talk about this game a lot when we do our picks because it's definitely a game that we're going to be picking the Red River Shootout. But Oklahoma moving up one spot, pretty nice win against Iowa State. Number 18, Duke. I only moved Duke down 2 spots. The quarterback the quarterback Riley Leonard got injured. Um, Sucks to see that late in the game there. Um, I mean, people are critical of Duke playing prevent defense. And to me, okay, they shouldn't have, but I'm not really going to get on Duke for that. It's gonna be interesting to see how they go through the rest of the season now since they're not undefeated anymore. I moved Duke down 2 spots. I still believe in them. I still think Mike Elko is doing an excellent job there. Moved Duke down 2 spots. Number 19, Kansas State. Kansas State, they were on a bye this week. Moving up 1 spot. I still think Kansas State's a great team. I know people are gonna be like, "Oh, Missouri's better than them because they beat them head to head." That was on a 61-yard field goal. Um, they get a Mulligan there for me, Kansas State. I moved them up 1 spot. I'm still pretty high on Kansas State. It's gonna be interesting to see how they do. They get a game against Texas. That's gonna be interesting. I believe they get a few other big games in the Big 12, so it's gonna be interesting to see what Kansas State does. But I do believe in them. Number 20, LSU. I moved LSU down 6 spots. What a crazy game there. I know I've already said that, but this defense for LSU needs a lot of work. Um, Offensively, I think they're fine. I believe Brian Kelly will get it together. They still get Alabama. They still get Florida, Auburn. They go ahead and get A&M. I think LSU overall will be fine. They're probably not very much of a SEC contender this year. And remember, during my preseason prediction, I said LSU will. I said they will lose the Ole Miss game. I mean, I said that, so I'm not surprised by this at all. Number 20 LSU moving down 6 spots. All right, 21 through 25 here. Number 21 Miami. They did not play. They did not play anybody this week. So number 21 Miami kept them at 21. Number 22 Washington State. I moved them up 1 spot. Um, I mean, they get UCLA next week. We'll see what happens there. Number 23, Missouri. Listen, Missouri's undefeated, and I actually think they're kind of for real. They get a big game against LSU this week. They still get Georgia, so we'll see what happens in those 2 games. But I listen, if you're 5-0 at this point in the Power Five, I gotta pick you into the top 25. That's basically what it comes down to. I might be a bit late to the party on Missouri, but I mean Kansas State, they have the impressive win against them. They went ahead and beat Memphis. They beat Vanderbilt. So Missouri, I do think they'll be better than 6-7 this year. I know that's kind of the benchmark for Eli Drinkwitz, but they will be better than that, in my opinion, from what I have seen this year. Number 23, Missouri. Number 24, Louisville. They went into NC State and got a win. Sometimes that's all that matters. I kept them at 24. And then number 25, Maryland. Call me a homer if you want, but as I said, if you're 5-0 in the Power 5 at this point, you're in the top 25. So number 25, Maryland. Do I think we lose to Ohio State? Yes, but I'm happy to say that the Terps are a top 25 team. So that's the top 25. Teams I dropped. Number 22, Iowa. I'm done with Iowa this year. I know they beat Michigan State. I don't care. K. K. Man. K. McNorma. Man, I'm butchering his name. K. McNamara. That's his name. He's injured. I don't know how long he's gonna be out for. Um, I think Iowa's screwed. I mean, And here's the funny thing about the whole situation. They might still win the Big Ten West. Big Ten West is wide open, but and it's pretty bad this year, I might add. Number 22 Iowa dropped them, and then number 25 Fresno State. Fresno State would be number 26 if this was a top 26 poll. I just dropped Fresno State because, as I said, I'm going to put 5-0 Power 5 teams in over 5-0 Group of 5 teams. But I do think Fresno State is a good team, even though I do think there's going to be some competition for that top spot in the Mountain West, because it does look like the top team in the Group of 5 is going to be coming out of the Mountain West, it looks like. Teams I consider: West Virginia. Let's give West Virginia some. Let's give them a shout out. 4-1, big win against TCU. A game that I believe they were like 12-point dogs in. I would definitely. I threw some money on West Virginia. I would definitely took West Virginia plus 12 if we picked that game on the YouTube channel. I did throw like a few bucks on West Virginia plus 12. I didn't expect them to win the game though. So and listen, look at West Virginia's schedule the next few games. Very manageable schedule. Starts with Houston next week. So keep an eye out for them. BYU 4-1. They're kind of my sneaky dark horse team. Still in line for that. They beat Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati not it's kind of like a middle of the road team, but BYU there. Kansas. I know Kansas was in a lot of top 25 polls this past week. They were number 26 in my poll. It was a top 26. They lost to Texas in pretty convincing fashion. Um, Kansas just doesn't have the athletes to go up. I know Jaden Daniels was out, but they just don't have the athletes to go up against Texas right now. I do think that they are a French top 25 team, though. I'm going to skip the two Mountain West teams real quick. Texas 8 and them. Listen, only one loss for them against Miami, who's ranked up at 21. So it is a good loss in my opinion. They get Alabama this upcoming week. We'll see what happens with them. And then the two teams in the Mountain West: Fresno State, Air Force, and Wyoming. Those three teams. I know UNLV's 4-1. They're gonna fade off some. Wyoming to me looks like the best Group of 5 team, and I know Air Force is 5-0, and listen, and I know Fresno State's 5-0, and Air Force and Wyoming do face each other next week. I do know, but Wyoming looks like the best Group of 5 team. The one loss is to Texas, and I kind of mentioned that before, and I did kind of allude to this. Wyoming, in my opinion, out of Fresno State, Air Force, and Wyoming, I would take Wyoming. I'm really impressed with what I've seen from Wyoming this year. I mean, they're the type of team that just grinds. I know the scores aren't overly convincing per se, but also they're one of the most talented teams in the country, and they just grind. I mean, it's it's going to be a tough out for Air Force, Fresno State, any really any team, probably not in the top 25, as Texas Tech found out. So those are the teams I consider. Comment down below, tell me your top 25. Always like hearing from you all. Thanks for watching the video. Hit the thumbs up, please. Subscribe to your channel. Very appreciate you do that. McD the Beast signing off.